teaching reading uniquely. To reverse underperformance, True School is here. Now let's be clear, our impact will be enormous. To the teachers across this nation, in eager anticipation, a sound from the streets that's so unique, it'll transform education.
True, yeah. Yeah, like true, yeah. Prepare yourself for more than just a hip-hop trend. Here to criticize and analyze through hip-hop lens. Prisons claiming our sons, use our daughters for fun. Pen is stronger than swords, so these books are stronger than guns. Breaking the pipeline, making their light shine. No more believing in all of these white lies. Dr. Shango Blake Speaks, better tune to the station. This podcast will outlast all of your tribulations. This principle got principles, that's why y'all hating. Dr. Blizzy's vibrations felt across the nation. Recruiting the youth, only teaching the truth. Cause the future is bright and our kids are the proof. So if you wanna be you, then march to these drums. Welcome to the classroom, Hip Hop 101. Dr. Blake Speaks, the lesson is begun. Welcome to the classroom, Hip Hop 101.
Watch this.
Welcome to the Classroom Hip Hop 101 with Dr. Blizzy. We are in Season 3, Episode 1, and this is such an exciting time. We're going to be speaking about the reopening of schools in New York City Department of Education and how parents feel marginalized and not a part of the decision-making. We have conversations with elected officials, educators, and community activists around what's happening with this issue. So stay tuned, get ready, get set, because we are ready to go.
What do we want? Safe schools. What do we want? Safe schools. When do we want it? Now. What do we want? Safe schools. When do we want it? Now.
Why are we here today? We are here because no Black and brown parents or community voices have been heard in the reopening of New York City Department of Education schools.
If you don't get it right during the school year, you go to summer school. Why the hell were we not in summer school to figure out how to open the schools correctly in the first place?
In the city level, instead of defunding NYPD by $1 billion and funding education for that $1 billion, guess what? Education got cut $1 billion.
My question here today is just that how can you make a decision at the table without asking the 63% of Black and brown kids that attend the DOE system?
You will not shut us down. We will speak up for our families, for our communities, and our children.
With that being said, my question to the New York City Department of Education and our Mayor de Blasio, what systems and plans are in place to support the mental and social, emotional well-being of students returning to school in the midst of a pandemic and social unrest?
My thoughts are basically, how can you just open schools and we didn't even get a say in it, and you just open it and expect that all kids are supposed to come back in full attendance when some parents are still insecure about sending their kids back to school and they're not sure if schools are safe and if other kids are safe.
But you know what's worse and most heartbreaking to me that I have to explain to my children? That is because of our zip code and the color of their skin that this is happening to.
Come on.
All she needed was after school care for her son. They wouldn't let her sons stay in school because they have ADHD and they run around a lot. So where is the system? Where are these programs for these kids that have these unidentifiable disabilities that Queen Alina was talking about?
All students should have a working laptop to be able to work on their studies at home. We don't need to be in school right now. The cases of COVID-19 is rising.
So therefore, we're going to show the DOE, we're going to show the city council, we're going to show the mayor what community looks like. We ourselves, we trying to understand why they spent $1 billion on iPads that don't work.
What do we want?
Safe schools.
What do we want?
Safe schools.
When do we want it?
Now.
What do we want?
Safe schools.
When do we want it?
Now.
If we don't get
Good.
it,
Shut it down.
if the students
welcome back to the Classroom Hip Hop 101 with your host, Dr. Blizzy. So, Cassandra, how you doing, my sister?
I'm doing well, my brother. I'm just excited for this year, another season. Even though it's the COVID years, we're about to make it happen and empower our young people and our parents, which is why that clip was important.
Absolutely. I was going to ask you, so you saw parents rallying, talking about they need to have their voices heard. They've been shut out of the process. When you think about the parents reasserting themselves, black and brown parents in particular, and saying we're going to become a political force in New York City, what are your thoughts?
I think it's important and it's much needed because, again, we're disconnected, disenfranchised, and we don't have a voice, especially during this pandemic. And what's best for our young people, when our parents' voice is silenced, it becomes violence because they're not being serviced the way that they need, and they become complicit in the criminal enterprise, like I like to say, because we're not being addressed. Our needs are not being addressed. And the only time that people hear us is during election time, which is a very small window for them to do what's necessary for our young people or our people, and then they go back to business as usual. So having this rally was important to make sure that they understand that we're not okay with the status quo. We're going to challenge it, we're going to stand up, we're going to hold accountable those people who are supposed to be looking out of our best interests.
I'm telling you, I looked at it, those parents were organized, they were serious, they had something to say, and I think it was like one resounding message, and that was, we want our schools to be safe, we want our children to be safe, and we want to be included in the process.
Yes.
Stop with your lip service. Stop telling us everything is going so well. I remember, earlier this summer, Mayor de Blasio put out this survey where he said 74% of the parents returning to school. And it was giving this impression as if like that meant everybody was cool with going to school. But what they're not telling you is that that number is really also very close to the 63% of the parents who have no choice. If you have to make a decision between, do I put food on the table, do I make sure that the light bills are paid,
right,
or do I take my child and put them at school and put their health at risk? You're giving parents like really no choice at all. And it's really what you said, it's violent policies
right,
that are not inclusive of parents, because had they included parents would have told them, well, look, if I put my child in school, how do I know they're going to be safe?
Right.
I can't go fully remote because I got to work. I got to put food on the table.
Absolutely.
So these are the issues and things that parents are struggling, especially these are the same parents who are essential workers, the same parents who have lost jobs and lost economic opportunity, and yet it was just, I think, very insensitive.
Absolutely, absolutely. But this is where the implicit bias comes in at, because they assume that we're going to go with the status quo and that we don't have valid ideas and concerns for our children. This is where the equity comes into place, because if you're going to listen to one group, you have to listen to all of them because you're servicing them all. And just because one group is able to go back and they have the privilege where they can decide, well, I'll let my child do remote, doesn't mean that everyone has that opportunity. And then making sure that they have the proper technology to meet the needs of those students. That's what's important as well. And then how do you address those students who need extra support services, such as those special ed students? So how are you going to meet the needs of these kids? And those are valid concerns these parents have, and it needs to be addressed, and it needs to be respected in the fact that, yes, everyone needs to get their education, but there are so many different ways that it can be done. And like they said, he said, there's summer school. So where were the politicians and the people that were making these decisions during summer, working on positive, proper plans to appropriate, making sure that our students and young people get what they need, and the parents felt comfortable enough with the decisions that are being made. Absolutely. If you don't include them, then they don't have a voice, then they're just sending them to, out to the lion, from the lions into the lion.
Well, parents, I was out there, right there with you. We support you. We pray for you and your children that you have a safe and productive year. But I want to encourage those parents out there, keep organizing, keep raising your voice, because it's time for us to move mountains, and we do that through our unity. So, shout out to the parents and the community organizers out there.
Salute to everyone, and have a positive, safe, healthy school year.
Classroom Hip Hop 101 with your host, Dr. Blizzy. I'm sitting here with two phenomenal educators. We have Sister Olubunmi Fashusi and we have Kojo Campbell. How y'all doing today?
Doing great, doing great.
Doing good. Listen, I'm so excited to have you. Full disclosure, I know this brother and this sister from their work and their activism. We're all part of a phenomenal organization called Black Influencers United, aka Be You, and that's what we are. We be you, be your own original black self, be your own authentic black spirit and energy, and make sure that our children understand the same. So I just want to start off to set some history and some context for who you are. So both of you are educators. Kojo, you are an assistant principal. Sister Bumi, you're a math teacher.
Yeah.
Now, do you both work at the same school?
We do. Van Sicklen Community Middle School in East New York.
Yeah.
And you both have a history of doing a lot of work around STEAM. Could you explain what STEAM is and some of the work that you've done around STEAM and introducing, STEAM kind of programs to our children?
Yeah, STEAM is an acronym for Science, Technology, Engineering, Arts, and Math. And basically, it's really an initiative to have students really show their prowess as it pertains to designing different things and then actually building things. And so in our district, our school, we boast that we're leaders in STEAM, so we organize annually a STEM Olympics event that has different schools from the district actually come and compete with their different products. So students bring tennis ball launches and bridges and mousetrap cars, and we do a Lego robotics hackathon. And so they bring their products and we have a competition around it. So we
So you're saying in your district, you're the best?
Well, I'm saying, so I'll say this, that quantitatively, we generally win often.
What is your district? What district is this?
This is District 19.
So y'all heard in District 19, the challenge is been laid down. They're saying that their school is the best.
Oh, no, schools in District 19, they take this seriously.
Right.
STEAM is a big thing in the district. Our superintendent is phenomenal, he pushes it. We have Eric Adams, who funded a lot of different schools in the district, big proponent of STEM and STEAM.
That's
and
great.
So there's been a lot of movement in East New York, giving students and opportunities to really flex when it comes to science and technology.
So, Sister Boomer, I got to ask you, how important is it for our children to be exposed to science, technology, engineering, mathematics? I believe that historically, our students have like math phobias, or sometimes don't see themselves as future engineers and architects and physicians or in the field of physics. Like, how do you break past that anxiety and show them that this is something that is reachable and doable?
Right. I think first step is just teaching them that you come from scientists, you come from engineers, you come from mathematicians. Like, people built pyramids thousands of years ago. They didn't have a phone, and they didn't have Siri to tell them how to do it. Your people built great things. They were the ones who were able to calculate things. And so I think that's step one, telling them that people who look like you, who come from the same culture you come from, have done great things in terms of science, technology, engineering, arts, and math. So it's not far removed from you. So I think that's step one. Another step is just providing them with opportunities to be confident and providing them with opportunities to succeed. I think sometimes with math, there's like a fixed mindset, like either you're good at it or you're not. And same thing with the other aspects of STEAM, the science, the technology. But really showing them, like, this is a challenge that you can rise to. The same way you play NBA 2K, you're trying to figure out how to get your player to advance to the next level, you keep at it. You don't one day play NBA 2K or play Minecraft or Fortnite and then you're like, oh, I'm done playing video games forever. You keep at it. And I think just trying to teach students to have a growth mindset around STEAM is really important, to show them that you got to keep trying at it. That's what you do to be a successful adult, and you could do the same thing to be a successful student when you're a child as well.
I think that's so powerful, especially the aspect of teaching history and letting them see that they come from a people who have done great things. I think often in these schools, there's a problem with the teaching of history, and not just Black history from the perspective of what we've done when we got to America, right? What has been our contribution to the development of the world?
Right.
And I think when you put it in that context, I think it opens up the door for these kind of conversations, and then it's something that is a reachable goal.
Definitely.
Now I want to pivot for a moment. Both of you are members, as I said, of Black Influences United. You're both a part of the advocacy committee, and you have been recently, and specifically strategic partnerships. So there's a lot going on in New York City. So let's get into it. Let's talk about it. One, the reopening of schools. Not even to talk about what happened, how the schools were closed down, but the schools are now reopened. You have this fear and this anxiety around COVID-19, and there's been some parents who have and community members who have something to say about their lack of voice or their lack of involvement in the reopening school process. Eric Adams, you mentioned him earlier, had a rally in front of the New York City Department of Education, Tweed Courthouse. We were there. We supported him. What is your takeaway? First of all, what are parents saying? Like, what did you hear?
I think it's a complex situation. You know, I think that this has been a situation where different people have been impacted in different ways. You know, there's some people who are extremely traumatized, and there's some people who are moderately traumatized. I think we're all traumatized, right? And then, the other piece is returning to school. There's different, it impacts families in different ways. Some families need their child to be in school right now. Some parents would rather not. They have that opportunity to have their child home, dealing with their work situation. And so I think it's, extremely complex. I think that, the issue of parent voice becomes very important in a dynamic like that, because now you have, just our school, there's a spectrum of complexity, but then you talk about a school system with 1.1 million kids, and it's like, certain decisions are being made, and it's like, well, where's the consideration for the different neighborhoods in terms of these decisions, right? So now we're seeing an uptick in certain locations in Brooklyn,
Yes.
right? So
And
you have a lot of,
and in other parts of
so it's very dynamic and tough for parents, and so a lot of parents are frustrated, like so many, just because of the information changing so often, and so really kind of just figuring out, like, what do I need to do? So even for a parent who are trying to plan for their student to return and then the date changes, it's like, it's very unsettling. How can I plan to re-engage and go to work and do this? And there's so many moving parts. So for administrators and teachers who are planning, and even people in Central, like, if they're frustrated and at all the moving parts, imagine families who have no idea in terms of when decisions are being made, what information is out there. There was a lot of confusion about the start date, in terms of how they interpreted the date. Right. And so it's been a challenging time.
Well, when I was there, I heard parents clearly say that we should be included as partners in the decision making around things that are going to impact our children. In a city where you have over 64% of the student population is Black and brown. How do you not have, and this is what I heard, how do you not have, Black and brown parents at the table as equal partners in the decision-making process? Right. And then there was issues around the safety of schools. What was some of the things, what was your takeaway?
I have a few takeaways. I think first, it seems like the one decision parents were able to make was you could keep your child home. But I think what I'm understanding from parents is, like, that's not the only decision that I want to be a part of in terms of my child's education. Like, either choosing between remote learning and blended learning should not be the only decision that I'm able to make. There should be other ways that I can offer my thoughts. My take is that, like, I feel like a part-time teacher, part-time tech support. Like, I was joking with people this week that I'm honorary genius bar. Because the first week of school, it was just a lot of calls with parents. It got to a point where I was like, let's FaceTime or let's do a video call so that I could just help you with your child's technology. Like, it's not enough to just give students technology, which is a big push a lot. Like, we just need kids to have technology, but the technology has to work. Students have to know how to use it, and families have to know how to support their child with the technology. So that's been one thing. And then the other thing is just like, in theory, a lot of things sound good. Like, we're going to socially distance, we're going to put signs up. But I was telling Kojo, the first day I had kids in the building, you have an 11-year-old who's like, has a mask on and they already speak low. So I was like trying to maintain a 6-foot distance, but I would get a little closer.
And trying to listen.
And trying to build relationships and trying to foster community. So it's like, in theory, in my head, the way the day was going to play out is not how it actually played out. So it's like, it's even more vital for parents and teachers and administrators to be able to offer insight about like, okay, this is what we had planned in theory, but in practice, this is what's happening. So how can we respond and adapt to actually be safe for students, teachers, and administrators?
So let me give some history. Black parents and brown parents for the last 40-something odd years have really had no voice in the decision-making as relates to their children. What I mean by that is the black voice in education in New York City has been absent for quite some time. And teachers now coming into the system often don't feel a need to align with the community. Kojo, you come from a tradition and a family that was intentional about building relationships with the community, teachers knowing that they are part of the community, schools understanding that they had to work with the community. Your father is legendary in New York City, G2. The whole historic Ocean Hill, Brownsville case. How do you think today's black teachers in particular are, and I won't even say teachers, black educators are in terms of aligning themselves with the community? Is there more work to be done?
I think that there's a lot of work to be done. I think that when we looked at 1968 Ocean Hill, Brownsville, you had a very interesting dynamic where you had students, parents, teachers, administrators in that situation at 271 in Brooklyn, and even the first superintendent, Rhodey McCoy, who just transitioned.
That's right.
Who all stood together, right, for impacting the children's education and stood together for community control. So they stood together as a community. And so, you know, there's an interesting element when you look at schools of today where whose interests are educators, administrators, serving. Are they serving the community's interests? Do they seem like they're part of the community? Do they feel like they're part of the community? Are they serving the interests of Central, the mayor, the chancellor, you know? And so this is an interesting dynamic that we're in. And I think, you know, the work that, you know, BU is doing, Black educators, is really educators who want to, looking at how do we impact change from our different spaces, right? So yes, here I'm in a school and I understand the scope and of what I can do within a school, but also I'm a community member and I do understand my power as a community member as well. And even as we organize with parents, so BU, Black Affluences are people who are influence education, as you know.
Yes. I wonder how I know that.
Prez. So really, we're talking about parents, parent advocates.
Yes.
We're talking about community members because these are community schools. And so all community members should be impacting the education of community children. And so, you know, we are really, it's a shift that we're really urging the community to have in terms of how they're perceiving schools, and whose schools and how much, and really not asking for a seat at the table, but really saying, hey, you know, our voice should be having an impact on these schools. And so, you know, in '68, this was strong. And so I think, really refashioning that mindset is really important right now. And as we see, how this is playing out, I think it's an interesting time to
Also
really,
an interesting opportunity.
absolutely, to really revisit, well, how can we imagine what democracy in education looks like today,
Sister,
right?
I want to ask you, Sister Bumi, you're a teacher, and you are a teacher who has a community mindset, right? You're engaging with community. I want you to close us out with this, the response to this question. What could you do as a teacher to help your fellow teachers understand, or what are you doing to help your fellow teachers understand how important it is to build really meaningful, not symbolic relationships with parents, where we have some form of operational unity on behalf of Black children?
Right. It's interesting. I feel like if I were to do a survey of all the teachers in the New York City Department of Education and actually ask them if they know about the Ocean Hill-Brownsville situation, I don't even think a lot of them would know about it. And I sometimes question, if I didn't work with Kojo, if I would know about it as well. So I think one thing is actually sharing resources. There are a few podcasts and a few documentaries that discuss it. But to know that at some point in time this was a thing, especially for educators who might have been born after 68, even if they're from New York, they may not know anything about it. And so I think step one is to even expose them to the fact that at some point communities did have control over schools, and for them to understand this was a thing, and for them to understand what Kojo was saying about how everyone came together to rally around it. When it comes to all the reimagining that people are asking us to do right now, sometimes I'm like, we don't need to reimagine, we just need to imagine what was done before, or what's being done across the world, in terms of prisons and stuff. Sorry, I'm going on a tangent, but I think step one is to just even explain to them about Ocean Hill-Brownsville if they don't know about it. And I would venture to say more teachers than not don't know about it. So that's one thing. How I personally engage in the community is I try to eat in the community. I try to be seen in the community. And so it's interesting. It's an interesting dynamic when you're in the local supermarket and your students see you and they're like, oh, hey, Mr. Sushi, I know you ate
one of the best feelings ever.
Right, it's great. Or when they see you, if you're using the local dry cleaner, if you're in the beauty supply store picking up stuff. So I think it's great to just actually commit to spending money and finances in the community if you can. I think that's a great thing, especially when you see families. I just love when I see the parents of old students and I'm like, yo, how's blah, 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 So I think that's one small thing that teachers can do. And the other thing I was gonna say is just learning about the history of the community. I teach in East New York, but it would be very reckless for me to just show up there and not know what's the history of this community, what's the history of schools in this community. I feel like those are two very simple things that teachers can do in order to foster a community mindset in the schools in which they work.
Well, Sister Bumi, Brother Kojo, I want to thank you for being guests on the Classroom Hip Hop 101. We want you to come back so that we can check in with you, see what's going on with BU, advocacy, and strategic partnerships. And we wish you well, and we pray that you have a healthy and safe year.
Thank you.
We will be right back after this commercial break. Hi, I'm Dr. Blake, CEO of True SK Consultants. True SK Consultants, the True stands for Teaching, Reading Uniquely to Reverse Underperformance, and the SK stands for School. So we're not old school, we're not new school, but we're true school. We are an innovative company focused on whole school reform. And today I'd like to introduce you to my corporate partners who focus on parent and student engagement.
Hi, I'm Savannah Banana. I'm an entrepreneur. I am 8 years old. I am a fashion designer and I am in 2nd grade. The company I own is Savannah Banana Clothing. I am partnered up with True SK Consultants to show kids how cool it is to be a business owner.
Hi, I'm Brazil Dow and I'm an entrepreneur. Hi, I'm Princess Dow and I'm an entrepreneur.
We are the Dow twins. We are 8 years old and in 2nd grade. We act, we model, we have a store online, we write children's books, and we co-develop a learning app that helps kids with spelling words and sight words.
But what we are most known for
is our kid-friendly brand of water called Water to Kids that we created to get kids healthy with hydration. We partnered with True SK Consultants to teach kids the importance of healthy habits and how to become entrepreneurs.
Hi, I'm Chloe Pope and I'm an entrepreneur.
I am 10 years old and in the 4th grade. I am the CEO and owner of Chloe D Speaks. I am a celebrity kid blogger and I am also a proud partner of True SK Consultants, and I'm here to teach young kids like me how to start their own businesses.
Now I'd like to introduce you to the parents of my partners.
Hi, I'm Melina Dow. I'm the mommy of the Dow twins. Myself and my young entrepreneurs have partnered with True SK Consultants and Dr. Blake to share all of the information that we've learned on our journey. We want to help parents and their children learn new methods of teaching kids healthy habits and entrepreneurship.
Hello everyone, my name is Sandra Jordanay and I'm the mother of Chloe D. She is the CEO of Chloe D Speaks, and we're both partners of True SK Consultants. This venture is very important to me because Chloe, when she started reading, she wasn't interested in reading or writing, and I found a way to have her improve her reading and writing skills through blogging. And through the blogging, we created the company Chloe D Speaks. And I think that the model that I use to help Chloe become a better writer, a better reader, and a better interviewer was through the blogging aspect. And so I'm happy to be with True SK Consultants to help teach parents how to get their children involved in improving whatever skills they need to improve along with entrepreneurship.
Hi, my name is Jessica Smith. I'm the proud mother of Savannah Banana. I have partnered with True SK Consultants to show parents how cool it would be to teach their children how to own and operate their very own business. My intentions are to show parents the step-by-step process on how to begin a business for their child.
Welcome back. In this segment, we talk to Sister Zakiyah Ansari, a strong fighter and advocate for parents and schools to make sure that schools are equitably funded from New York State and that we get our fair share of the dollars. This is what she had to say. Welcome. Welcome to the Classroom Hip Hop 101. I'm your host, Dr. Blizzy, and we have a very special guest here today, Sister Zakiyah Ansari. Zakiyah Ansari is an advocate director for the New York State Alliance for Quality Education, and she is a leading statewide organization that is fighting for educational justice in New York State. I was just looking at some of the things that you're involved with. You're involved with the Justice League. You're dedicated for over 20 years for fighting for educational justice and ending oppression for Black and brown children. You have 8 children, so
Yes,
you are
sir.
definitely a legitimate, authentic parent voice. Sister Zakiyah,
Yes.
I want to tell you about how I know a little bit. So years ago, I came into knowledge of the campaign for fiscal equity, and I just wanted to start by asking if you could tell us a little bit about what that was about and why that is so important in terms of the needs of our children. And I think if more parents knew about it, they would be motivated to get active like you are.
Yeah. So thank you for having me. So the Campaign for Fiscal Equity was started in 1993. Then parent Robert Jackson, who is now Senator Robert Jackson, and some other parents from Washington Heights, realized a lot of what we're realizing today, which is Black and brown children didn't have access to a lot of things, while folks and parents in the Upper West Side and others had access to so much. And so they decided to bring a lawsuit against New York State to say the state was not meeting its constitutional obligation to provide every child with a sound basic education. And after a 13-year battle in the courts, because of the organizing of the Alliance for Quality Education, we were able to get then Governor Spitzer to put this historic amount of money of almost $6 billion into the public school system. And while it started off as just a New York City thing, what wound up happening throughout that 13-year battle, what we realized is that there was many of these issues happening across the state and other cities. And so it became a statewide advocacy piece. Also, obviously, imagine just New York City advocating for something to give billions of dollars to schools. The rest of the state, if we want to get all the state legislature on board, like, what's in it for me, right? That's just the reality, as well as that there are other cities that were experiencing the same thing. So we were able to get the governor to put this historic amount of money. In 2007, 2008, we began to see improvements from half day pre-K going to full day pre-K, to supports for English language learners. Began to see increases in success in education. And then, of course, in 2009, the economic crisis hit, and we have been fighting ever since, trying to claw our way back up to having New York State fulfill its commitment to students, of which they still have not after 14 years, pretty much. So, yeah.
So I want to understand this because my understanding, as you said, is when the suit was brought, money began to be given, like you said, under Governor Spitzer, and enters Governor Cuomo. And my understanding is he was making the argument that the schools were properly funded, the money that was owed was received, and as far as he was concerned, the matter was mute. So what's the politics behind that? What's
Yeah.
going on here with Governor Cuomo?
So post Spitzer was Patterson, and in the midst of the budget crisis, he cut $1 billion plus from schools. His term was up. Governor Cuomo came in, and actually, when he was running, he was saying that we have a tale of two cities, as two states, right? Like, it's like one for the rich and one for the poor, and said that a campaign for fiscal equity. I'm paraphrasing, but pretty much he was in support of a campaign for fiscal equity, and that was what was going to be his fight. And then, of course, as soon as he gets in there, he cut an additional $1 billion plus from schools. So we had the 1.3 or so from Patterson on top of a 1.4 from Cuomo, and then it's just been downhill from them. Him saying that he is for campaign for fiscal equity has not been. And year after year, he continues to actually not fully fund it, while also that the cuts from the last recession that we had, it took 6 years to pay that back. And so you could just imagine the impact. Actually, we know what the impact was for many, many years, over those 6 years of Black, brown, and poor children throughout the state, of loss of programs, loss of access, anything that you could think of, they lost it over those 6 years of not having these dollars and still not fulfilling the campaign for fiscal equity. So the governor has, in the midst of everything that's going on, says, yeah, it's mute. Like, we don't owe this money. But we have the Education Law Center and others say you do still owe this money because you have not fully fulfilled your commitment from the get-go.
So does it go back to the courts?
Well, it has. It went back. It was like a small courts case that still that we kind of lost in the first round, but it's going back and seeing if something can happen, and we can get some movement on it. The pandemic has absolutely highlighted the inequities of not having these dollars and actually the inaction of equity, period. So, yeah.
I'm going to say that. Ask you, like, so now we fast forward the pandemic, and there's now even more budget cuts on some of these historical underfunding. And I know you and a coalition of parents, I would say within the last 2 to 3 weeks, I would say about 3 weeks, you rallied in front of Governor Cuomo's New York downstate office to raise that issue. Tell me what the purpose of that rally was, and what do you hope to accomplish by continuing to raise awareness around this issue?
Yeah. And so at that time, and it still continues today, we were urging and demanding Governor Cuomo, because he was suggesting or threatening, I should say, that he was going to withhold 20% of school aid across the board. This is all statewide. And that would have been about $5 billion across the state, additional cuts. And so we were urging on that specific day, saying we don't cut 20%, but it's the same narrative we also been having around tax to ultra wealthy. And so it was a combination of both. Do not cut any more funds from our schools. New York City specifically had just cut $1.1 billion from schools during the budget. And this is that we were saying, do not cut, do not withhold, because again, he uses these words and acts like it's not a cut. But when you don't have money and you have to get rid of staff, or you're cutting programs, that's a cut. That's a cut to schools. It's less than what children had before. And so that's why we were there. Tax the ultra wealthy and don't make these cuts to schools. Protect our children and not billionaires.
Sister Zakiyah, he's branded himself as the savior of New York State. He has several daily press briefings where he exudes empathy about what parents are feeling in terms of loss. We know that in New York City, many of the essential workers are the ones who have to now send these children into these schools that are underfunded. Sounds like there's a contradiction in terms of what he's presenting and what he's doing.
Well, it's hard for someone who's 20,000 feet up to understand what the ground needs. And he has not ever been, as far as I know, one who even tries to understand that. You know, we've invited him over the years. AQE is 20 years old. We've invited him over the years, and he's only been governor for 9. At one point, to come to a rally when we pre-COVID, when we used to bring up like thousands of parents to Albany, and he chose not to come. He chose to go to a charter rally and say, "I will fight to make sure that charters are protected." I think that was in 2014. He's been through a handful of public schools. He's actually visited a handful of public schools. I think you could, on one hand, statewide, as a governor for 9 years. So that says so much, right? And as an organization, he constantly attacks us and says, you know, like, we're the status quo. But at the end of the day, he is. And if he's taken millions of dollars in his coffers to fund his election, we heard what Donald Trump says: if I give money, I expect something in return. And so Governor Cuomo's been giving his billionaire buddies what they want in return for their millions of dollars they're putting in his political coffers.
So what's the next step, and how can other organizations and parents in general get involved with this movement? I mean, you've been at, to me, and your organization has been at the vanguard. How do we, other organizations, other community groups, how do we get the word out? And how do we get behind the push? I really want to understand what you think are next steps.
Yeah. So I think it's a multi-step issue. This is the first year, and it's the pandemic, that we as an organization have had to deeply organize on all levels of government. Normally, the state is our baby. January to March, we go hard. We strategize, and maybe from November to December. And by April, we switch to the city budget, and it's not as hard as it's been, right? We've never really had to engage intensely as we have on the federal level, even though we are part of a national alliance called the Journey for Justice Alliance and do some national work. So this is what I ask and urge folks to do. There's multiple steps you can take. On the federal level, we need you to call your congressional representatives and tell them we need them to push hard to bring in a HEROES Act that is going to bring at least $3 billion to New York State. On the state level, we need you to call your state legislature. That's your assembly person and your senator. Google them just like you Google so many things. Find out who is your senator, who is your assembly person, and urge them to push our assembly speaker, Carl Hastie, and our Senate Majority Leader, Andrea Stewart-Cousins, to tax the ultra wealthy. We cannot wait. What we're hearing from the governor and what we've heard from the state legislature over the last few months is that they have been waiting for the federal government to save us, and have not wanted to tax the ultra wealthy for fear that if Trump knew that we could do that we would not get federal money. Now, we have a white supremacist in the White House, and for anybody to think that person and Betsy DeVos, who's a privatizer, to any one of them, that we're going to wait for them to save us, as Black and brown folks, we already know how that turns out. So we can tax the ultra wealthy. We have billionaires. We have over 119 billionaires here in New York State. Most of them live in New York City. And we can do this. Their wealth grew by $77 billion during the pandemic. $77 billion with a B. They have money to spare. They need to pay their fair share, and we need to protect our children, not billionaires. So that's on the statewide level. On a city level, we are right now, because of everything that happened on a statewide level, we got cut $717 million from the state when the governor didn't give us our money during the budget season. And therefore that left to a $1.1 billion cut to New York City public schools. So there's still advocacy needs to be done. And community schools, which is a proven program that's been working in our schools, is getting cut $9 million. That's 20 schools without those dollars of proven strategies that have been happening in those schools, predominantly Black and brown kids that are getting cut. So call your city council member and say we need to fund our community schools. We cannot afford to lose them. We cannot afford to cut them. And also that we need to divest from NYPD to invest in our public schools. If we believe that our children deserve to have a high quality education, then we all must make sacrifices and we all must prioritize. And the prioritization should be Black, brown, and poor children throughout this state. So I gave you 3 ways. Follow us on AQE. We constantly are having actions that happen. Yeah, on Instagram, our email, sign up to be part of our email list. We're constantly doing actions on all levels of government too. And we need more warriors in this fight than less. So if you're down to join the fight for educational justice, to support public schools, please follow aqeny.org.
Sister Zakiyah, I want to thank you for joining us on the Classroom Hip Hop 101. And we really want to get a chance to have you come in the studio so we can do a deeper dive on these issues. But keep up that fight, sister, and we're behind you.
Thank you. Be well, everyone. Wear your mask. Be safe.
Take care.
Thanks, Dr. Lake.
Wow, Sister Zakiyah Ansari provided us with a lot of history about the campaign for fiscal equity and how New York City schools have been historically underfunded by New York State. We wish you well in your fight to make sure that our schools get the resources that our children so desperately need. And we have more coming up with Brooklyn Borough President Eric Adams. But before we do that, let's check out this hot throwback with my man, DJ Cool, KG.
Come, if you got a real love for me.
Time to get funky, go ahead.
Stay away if you got games and tricks for me. I want a man that means everything he say, and not a boy full of play, pulling rabbits out your hat every day. Ooh, baby, I'm scared of you. I don't believe in magic. I believe in love everlasting. I can't understand that Houdini was a great musician.
The trauma that we are experiencing for the lack of communication, the lack of consistency, the lack of clarity. And we saw this at the end of the school year. We had no impact on coronavirus coming here to the city, but we did have an impact on ensuring that everyone will receive the necessary services and necessary resources. If you don't get it right during the school year, you go to summer school. Why the hell were we not in summer school to figure out how to open the schools correctly in the first place? And as the sister just mentioned, the dollar amount, there's a profit to poverty. When you are spending $900 per laptop for a 3-month plan, and then you go to many of our homeless shelters and you can't sign on, and then you don't give the services to children with special needs, and then you don't address the issues of those parents who don't have the luxury of missing a day of work because they're employed in McDonald's and Burger Kings or in low-skilled employment. That's right. You cannot have a one-size-fit-all program. Believe in the policies should be based on the economic affluent and not understand there's a dynamic on the ground that's being ignored. There is nothing more significant than the education of these children. That's right. That is the determining factor of who and what they're going to become. 80% of the men and women at Rikers Island upon entry don't have a high school diploma or equivalency diploma. When you deny their education, you're basically stating you are having a pathway to prison, and we're not going to stand for that. There's no way you're going to move in the manner that you're moving and ignoring the voices of black and brown parents that had to already go through the disproportionate reaction during COVID-19. This is a civil rights violation that is happening to these black and brown parents in this city. Lack of consistency, lack of clarity, inability to communicate is unacceptable. And I thank these parents for coming out, and all of you who are leaders of organizations that are speaking on behalf of the groups that you represent, to send a loud and clear message of whose schools? Our schools. Thank you.
This is the Classroom Hip Hop 101 with your host, Dr. Blizzy, and we are sitting here with Brooklyn Borough President Eric Adams, who has recently made a call to action on behalf of black and brown parents for the city to be more inclusive in the decision making in terms of the reopening of schools. So I'd like to start off by asking you, Borough President Eric Adams, why did you issue this call of action to black and brown parents regarding the reopening of NYC DOE schools? What was the issue?
It was really about, first of all, thank you so much for having me on, and your advocacy throughout the years, not only now during COVID-19, but just your continuous advocacy throughout the years. You and your family come from a level of advocacy for education and quality education, from childbirth to careers. Uh, Really, after several conversations with parents, parent groups, and young people about the mounting frustration they were experiencing in having individuals dictate their lives, and really speaking as though they were not in the room or the classrooms. And after hearing this over and over again, I reached out to people like yourself, who put together a coalition of parents and parents organizations, and we engaged in a conversation. And they pinpointed some clear areas of concern. But at the heart of the most important part of the concern was that the lack of engagement, the lack of clarity, communications, and consistency that left them feeling as though they were not playing a role in how they were going to educate their children. And so, well, after the call and after having a Zoom conference with the advocates, we decided to hold a rally at Tweed and have a call of action of the mayor and the chancellor to bring in black and brown parents to be part of this dialogue.
Thank you. I mean, there were so many parents after that rally that really appreciated that someone, and I'm referring to you, had the sense enough to step up and lead and raise this issue, because many of them really felt shut out. I wanted to know, what are the parents telling you about their expectations versus their experience with remote and blended learning?
First, let's look at the expectation. Of People want to be engaged in conversation. I cannot say it over and over again. Clarity, consistency, communication. That is so important, because you have to not only shape how you're going to get your child into an educational environment, but how are you going to deal with some of the other necessities that you are dealing with in your life. Oftentimes, we have this one size fit all when we merely can say, well, hey, how about one parent stay home while the other parent goes to their place of employment? That is not what real New York is about. In some cases, you have single parent households. In other cases, one salary is not enough to hold up an entire family. There's many of our families are not having two family employment or salaries coming in because of a luxury, but a necessity to keep the lights on. And so parents really want to just have a clear understanding of how their children are going to be educated. Now, what are they experiencing? And it really depends on where you are at the time. You look at our parents who are in shelters, something that's often forgotten, but many of them didn't have access to broadband, couldn't log on in some of their shelter location and shelter sites. It was sporadic at best. Oftentimes, they did not get the necessary iPads early enough. Some of our children went months without receiving any form of instructions or any form of iPads. The number of conversation I've had with parents who had to use their own personal hotspots on their cellular devices to try to get access to the DOE website. And so that body of people they were in our homeless shelters were not receiving the necessary support they deserve. And then you move to parents with special needs. Of the horror stories that these parents, the environment of children with special needs, and basically, I believe we just abandoned these parents, and they had to fend for themselves and figure out exactly how to receive the necessary support. And even when they called into the Department of Education, they tried to navigate the complexity of the system. No one was really there to give them the really additional support that they need when you have children with special needs. And the other group that is often overlooked, as I stated, were those parents that really could not stay home. Uh, Childcare was a big issue and continues to be a big issue. And when you say that although over 40% of the parents and households stated that they wanted to do remote learning, the challenge of not having a place or having that proper childcare for the younger grades was something that's extremely challenging, and we were not getting the level of support and consistency that the blended learning model would have offered. That uncertainty during the educational years, the school year, is really challenging. If you are a salary employee, you don't have the luxury to remote, telecommute. It's a real challenge to state, hey, I'm not coming in for 2 days a week or 3 days a week. That
Yeah.
just does not add up.
That the one of the points that you made at the rally that really resonated with me is you spoke about that many of the parents that are faced with these issues are also the very essential workers that are putting themselves and putting their bodies on the line for New York City. And I know you've done a lot of work with helping essential workers. You've been very actively involved in making sure that they get all their PPE equipment. Could you just connect the dot for us between the frontline workers who are putting themselves at risk, and then what they have to do when they come home and have to deal with the teaching and learning aspects of what they're dealing with in terms of their children?
Real challenge. And Brother Shango, at the beginning of when COVID virus hit the city, and we separated the city between essential and non-essential workers, I knew that was a problem. That was coded language, because clearly the essential workers are over 70% of Black and Brown and immigrant. And when we basically told them that number one, you can't shelter in place by the nature of your job. Number two, we're not going to give you personal protection equipment. And in some cases, if they attempted to wear it, they were going to be brought up on departmental charges in their place of employment. And number three, you couldn't, social distance or telecommute because your job didn't allow you to do that. You can't telecommute when you are a store clerk or school crossing guard, or you're in one of the centers that were actually handing out food during the grab and goes. And so the nature of the job, our nurses, our hospital employees, predominantly Black, Brown, and immigrant, the nature of the employment didn't allow that sort of telecommuting. The predominantly number of people who were able to telecommute were of white, affluent, middle class New Yorkers. And so there was a clear separation. And now, when you add the challenges of educating your children, making sure that they were able to sign on, making sure that they was receiving proper instruction, and not having childcare. That was a real crisis as I moved around the city during those first few months of dealing with COVID-19, of hearing parents that were just really saying, there's no one home with my child, or I had to drop my child off to an elder who can be subject to, being infected with coronavirus. That's why we were seeing those high number of cases during our elderly population. And so it was the creation or the lack of proper preparation that really impacted the communities of color disproportionately.
And I know that you had said that when you fail, you go to summer school to get it right, and that we didn't understand why the city didn't take the time to reflect, review, and go back to school to figure out how to open right. As we know that we've opened and reopened again. Let me ask you, just to pivot. You are currently running for the mayor of New York City. And I want to know, what grade would you give Mayor de Blasio on this, his handling of the COVID-19, specifically around the issue of education?
And thank you for that. And since I'm in a governmental building, I'm not permitted to talk specifically about any campaigning. But if we're talking specifically about how the mayor handled it, it's not really a political commentary. It's just an observation. I think we all know the COVID-19 situation created just extraordinary circumstances that really we much of it could not be predicted. But there were things that could be predicted. There were certain knowns that we had. We knew the population that would be hardest hit based on comorbidities. We knew the intersectionalities of some of the issues that people were facing. We knew that if we didn't get childcare, it would be a challenge. So there were a lot of norms. And the week before we decided to shut down the schools, we met with experts around how do we do remote learning to really improve on the instructional experiences of our children. I don't believe we utilized all of our assets and resources, particularly the upper management of the Department of Education. There should have been a full mobilization. When COVID hit here, I didn't go to the Hamptons. I went to NYCHA Housing. And if you're management, you need to be on the ground. And we should have spent the entire summer uh, dealing with how are we going to be prepared. We should have brought in all of the tech experts in this city. We should have brought in our vendors who have the franchise agreements. Uh, they should have all been around the table to come up with a master plan of remote learning. And the summer should not have been a summer off, because let's not kid ourselves. Our young people did not receive proper instruction during the end of the school year. And so we should have used the summer to complement the instruction that our children needed. It didn't mean they have to be in a classroom, but we could have used the remote learning mechanism to give our children 2 to 3 hours a day to ensure that they were getting a complementary education to what they lost over the school year. So we basically took summers off like we normally did, as though we had a normal end to the school year. That was not the reality. And we did not better use that summer to get ready. We were basically hoping that COVID was going to be ended by the beginning of the school year. And that is just not how you prepare to deal with the issues that we were facing. You hope for the best, but you prepare for the worst. And we just hoped for the best. We did no preparation for the worst, and that's why we dealt with the worst at the beginning of the year.
Thank you. So I know we can't talk about political aspirations, but you are on the Classroom Hip Hop 101. And I do have uh, a question for you that I'll just say this. There have been other elected officials who have been on this show. And when they answered this question correct, Borough President, Their career goes through the roof. So this question right here is a maker breaking kind of question. And the question I have for you, coming from the mighty borough of Brooklyn, who are your top 5 MCs?
Oh man. Now, when you use the MCs, are we talking about radio?
Any era, any era. Like you can go from any era with this one.
But give me your definition of an MC. Let me
Oh,
try
that's a great question. We're talking about somebody who is lyrical, who has lyrics, who has stage presence and show, and who is original. And you can go from any era that you want. We just want to know your top 5.
Right, right. Well, I have to start off with two of my favorite. I listen to them all the time, even now. Brother Biggie and brother Tupac.
Okay.
Those were some of my favorite. And another brother that many people don't realize and talk about often is my brother KRS-One. Real powerful lyrics that if you listen to, you see the depth of what he had to offer. And another old school brother that people don't realize, he knew how to blow, man. Curtis Blow. Curtis Blow.
That's a good friend of mine. Yes, yes.
Curtis Blow used to do his thing, brother, and some of those icons. And I think that some of the original guys that came out, who's a good friend and really very, very responsive, my brother Eric B. Eric B. And he just has been a giant for many years. And some of the women MCs that were really powerful throughout the years. My girl Foxy Brown, Little Kim, so.
Okay, now don't be a politician on me in this one, Brother Adams. We said 5. I know you getting everybody. You want to make sure when he see him, it's no problem. I want to say that you are officially, and we give this, and this is something that you can literally use, to get future jobs. You are Classroom Hip Hop 101 certified, my brother. And I thank you for being on the show. I just want to ask you one last question. Today is the official opening of school for middle and high school. The other day it was K-5. What is your message to educators and parents who are now returning to school? What parting message would you like to leave with them?
A lot of apprehension, and it should be expected. But brother Shango, let me tell you, every generation is going to face a challenge. My parents' generation faced Pearl Harbor. We faced 9/11. This generation is dealing with COVID and Trump and Black Lives Matter. It is all part of the evolution and experience that it will push us to where we're supposed to be. And I say to my parents, as I'm doing with my son, education is not only in the sterilized environment of the school building. Use this as an instructional moment and an educational moment to tell to our young people there are going to be obstacles and challenges in life. We can either look at them and say, woe is me, or look at them and say, why not me? I want to encourage our young people to say, hey, the DOE may have dropped the ball, then I'm going to pick up the ball. And I'm going to do my own creative ways of continuing education, do small focus group, go online together and tutor each other. High school students tutor middle school tutor the elementary, the lower grades. This is a real opportunity. I want to encourage my parents to do teaching circles on the block. Let's not kid ourselves. We have not been communicating with each other. We don't know our neighbors. Many of us have been living in silos, either on blocks or in our own homes. So why not bring together all the third graders on our blocks and start instructing each other? Those who are retired teachers can play a major role of doing online instruction. So this is a time for us to really say, how do we do what previous generations have done? Display our resiliency, our commitment, our dedication. And I want to look back on this moment of COVID-19 and said, I was the man that I knew I always was, by not only sitting back saying, woe is me, but why not me? And that's where we are right now.
Well, we want to thank you, Borough President Eric Adams. Uh, I remember your work from a police officer who was actively involved in the community, organizing police officers to build better relationships. How important is to bring that kind of message to the city of New York right now? Then your work as state senator, and now Brooklyn Borough President, and hopefully beyond. But we'll say that one other time. But I just want to say that we are clearly supporters of you here. Anytime you want to come back, give us any updates, share any information about the things you're doing, please come back and let us know. Thank you again, sir.
Thank you. Appreciate you. Take care.
Brooklyn Borough President had a lot to say about how we can re-engage parents and make them feel less marginalized. Very impressed with what he had to say and the insight that he offered. We want to wish you continued success, Borough President. We'll be back after this break.
Be legendary. Part of being legendary is creating things that never existed or heard in places you've never been before. The WCL team believes that we can all be legendary. And especially during times where we can't necessarily see each other. That doesn't mean the magic has to stop. So to all the creatives out there, keep on performing and let us hear your voice. Connect with us at info@worldcastlive.com.
Today's artist spotlight is Shauna Kane, and she's here to talk about her new EP, The Way. Shauna, how are you doing today?
I'm doing good. Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited.
Oh, we thank you.
To talk.
We thank you for being part of our premiere show. I just want to know, like, the album, the EP, The Way. I mean, with everything that's going on with the pandemic, COVID-19, with systemic racism that's happening in the United States of America, why did you name, and I don't know if it had any connection, but was there a connection with what's happening currently and the title of your EP?
The title of the EP actually came after brainstorming and trying to see what name we should name this body of work. And my dad actually brought up this name, The Way, and we all just kind of meditated on it. We're like, yeah, it's so powerful because the way represents a state of mind. It represents physically going some way, physically seeing how you operate and what your work ethic is, but it's also a state of mind. It's something really deep, and I think it will always relate to everything that's going on. We named it before the whole pandemic and everything, but it still relates because it's showing us that even though all these things are happening around us, we're still on a certain path. We're still in a certain mindset. We're still going the way, no matter what's happening around us. So it still relates, even though we named it before that.
I think it's just so appropriate. I mean, how many of us have lost our way? How many of us are trying to find our way? What you said it was a body of work that brought you to that title. So what particular songs would you say really are in line with the title of this particular EP?
Yeah, I would definitely say Look Back and I Am a Spirit come first to mind in terms of it relating to the title. All of them do, because all of them are literally like an audio representation of the past 2 years of my life. So the whole EP is a step-by-step journey. And the order of the songs also represent that. But Look Back is just me sharing my story, sharing how my life changed from going one direction to another. So that song is saying that I won't go back. I'm not going to go back to that other way, but now I'm walking this way, this new way. And I Am a Spirit is a very encouraging song. It's a song that it even encourages me sometimes when I need that. I need that truth. I need that hard truth. You know, when you need someone to encourage you but not give you that soft type of, you know, it's okay, whatever. But for someone to actually be like, no, listen, you're strong. You can do this. This is who you are. You don't have to be brought down by your feelings, by your pain. But it's a strong type of, you know, encouragement. Get up and keep going. So those two songs really, you know, embody that title as well, The Way.
I think that it's such a beautiful thing that this is about your own personal journey, because often when people hear somebody's testimony, it provides inspiration for them. And as we already know, a test can be a testimony, right? And so what do you hope that those who listen to this EP, how do you want them to walk away inspired? Like, what does that look like? What would bring you joy in terms of seeing how people are responding to the spiritual messages in your EP?
Yes, that's so amazing. Thank you for that question. I really would love for people to, I want people to just think about their lives. I want them to actually analyze it and realize which way they're walking, realize the patterns that they live in, realize the direction that they're heading in. Because a lot of times we're just living, we're just doing, but we don't take the time out to be like, wait, what am I actually doing that's making me head in this direction? Or what habits am I doing that I may need to stop? Or if I stop, I can be in a better place. So I really want to bring that thought-provoking message to them. And also in terms of the spiritual message, I would love for people to think about who they truly are and really get in tune with that, because we live in a world where we're so distracted every day, and there's not a lot of time for us to get to know who we truly are unless we intentionally do that. So I really hope and, you know, please pray that people just take the time to discover themselves and see what they can receive from the message. I'm just sharing what I've been through, sharing my experiences so that people can think about what they've been through. I want to really invoke that thought process.
You know, Shauna, it's interesting. You know, I know you said you made the EP prior to COVID, but I think a lot of people are reflecting on their lives. They're searching, they're reaching for that purpose, because, I mean, I think this pandemic has made us all pause and stop. I almost feel like, you know, God said, hey, I'm shutting it down so everybody can get back on what they need to be focused on and not the distractions that you represent. So I think that's beautiful that you have a song that is so appropriate for this time and this season. I have just one last question, and that is...
Okay, that's it. Okay.
No, one last question for you. I want to know, in one word, what's Shauna's way?
One word, huh? I want to say truth. I would just say truth. That's the way, truth. And truth doesn't change based on circumstance. That was more than one word, but the first word is truth.
No, that's fine for you to explain it. Amazing. So tell us, how can people get a hold of this EP? You know, where can they purchase it? How can they support you in this project?
Yeah, so they can find the EP on Apple Music, Spotify, all the major streaming platforms. They can follow me on Instagram at I am Shauna Cain. That's SHAWNACAIN. I also have a Facebook page and a YouTube channel that people can follow me on, because we're going to continue to drop some more content. I have lots more music videos to drop, so I'm really excited to stay in touch with people, and I've been able to talk to people around the world. So I love when people, you know, comment on stuff. I'm able to reply to them and, you know, interact with them. So you can find me on social media. It's Shauna Cain across the board, all the different platforms.
Well, you've heard it here on the Classroom Hip Hop 101 with Dr. Blizzy. Shauna Cain is showing you her way so you can find your way. Thank you again for being our guest.
Powerful. Thank you so much. Have a great day and great questions. Thank you again.
What a powerfully informative show. We'd like to thank you for tuning into the Classroom Hip Hop 101 with your host, Dr. Blizzy. And if you are interested in hearing more about my opinions and my experience with systemic racism, the lack of parent engagement in our schools, and what we need to do to bring viable solutions to education in America, tune into my podcast, Dr. Shango Blake Speaks. We want to shout out our partner, Worldcast Live Media, and the Worldcast Live Media crew, my super producer, Half Pint, and of course, my sisters and brothers over at Hip Hop for Justice.
Each and every last one of y'all, because I love myself. I know my life matters. I know Black Lives Matter.
Go crazy. Go winners.
Mother said life goes on no matter what. Truest to that statement, I'm finding myself stuck. I mean, I'm not saying I'm thinking about giving up, but it seems like they giving permission to kill us. Look, while the NBA shut down, NFL shut down, ain't no more distractions, act like you can't see what's up now. We used to think getting it on tape was the proof. You record them killing us, that's not a safe way to shoot. One expression for success is foot on their next season. If they doing this now, I wonder what's next season. Believe this, history repeats itself. Archbishop said in life, you only meet yourself. I wonder where in the past have we committed these sins? Slavery ended, but it feels like it's beginning again. Britney Spears when they pop, oops, I did it again. No emotion while he choking is a devilish grin. So think about it, what's the message that was sent through? If the ones that's killing us is deemed essential, they spark your emotions, they captivate your mental. They say it's not on purpose, but they meant to. We gotta change, this is not a good feeling. Manipulated by the cards that they dealing. The only question that's considered bone chilling is what number do you call when I'm on one doing the killing? Listen. So do Black Lives Matter? Do our Black Lives Matter? I hear the bickering and all the chit chatter, but I got one question, do our Black Lives matter? Do our Black Lives go crazy? This is our Black Lives go crazy. We live in Black Lives. Do our Black Lives go crazy? Rest in peace, George Floyd. Rest in peace, Breonna Taylor. Rest in peace, the unknown. Rest in peace. Too many times we saying rest in peace. Time for us to rise in power. Let's get it together, y'all.